So far on the channel we've covered the Legend and we've covered the LS, the debut models for both Acura and Lexus. So I think it's about time we cover the debut Infiniti model, and take a look at luxury through the eyes of Nissan. And unlike Infiniti's initial ad campaign for this car, I will show you a picture of what the Q45 actually looks like. Not exactly the traditional luxury car aesthetic, but if Acura can make luxury flagships work with 6 cylinders and front-wheel drive, surely the Infiniti can do the same with a belt buckle instead of a grille, right? Well, 35 years later, we already know the answer, but low sales numbers don't necessarily mean a car is bad. It could be a great car and just never found its market. And Nissan was making a lot of good cars in the late 80s and early 90s, so how bad could it be? So let's explore each generation of the original Infiniti flagship and find out if it's an underrated diamond in the rough or if it's been forgotten about for a reason. November 8, 1989, the first 51 Infiniti dealers opened their doors across America, just a few months behind Toyota's Lexus division. Upon entering the 1989 showroom, you would have been greeted with 2 debut 1990 model year vehicles, the M30 Coupe and the flagship Q45 sedan. Right away, just looking at the styling of the Q45, we can see that the Infiniti took a little bit of a different approach than Lexus or Acura. Lexus, for example, did extensive market research in the US prior to launching to determine exactly what it was Americans wanted out of an upscale luxury sedan. Not to mention the Toyota Cressida model helped test the waters for them as well. Nissan opted for a different approach, instead choosing to, as Infiniti said, express the Japanese concept of luxury, with a design that was intended to feel distinct from American or European models, focusing on traditional Japanese craftsmanship. Or at least that's what Infiniti's design team says. But I'm not seeing any curtains, doilies, or crests on the Q45. I'm also not seeing a grille. Instead of a grille though, we do have this large emblem. It features Infiniti's Endless Road insignia decorated in Kuizumi style art. This sort of art style has been used in Japan for centuries, and for a vehicle emblem, this thing is actually pretty intricate. While it often gets teasingly referred to as the Q45's belt buckle front end, I actually think this little badge is pretty cool. The only thing is, I think Americans in 1990 were a little hesitant to buy a luxury car without a grille. It's just not the right image. Curiously, the Nissan President, the Japanese model that the Q45 is based off of, does have a grille. Infiniti was actually trying to position the Q45 as a performance luxury sedan, so maybe they thought this looked more streamlined or more modern. But I think this front end would have worked better on the M30. The rear of the car I actually quite like, especially when equipped with the spoiler, part of the Q45's touring package. I like the full-length taillight design that swoops right across the lower part of the trunk lid. The interior is actually really nice. If it was in a Maxima. Here's what I mean by that. I like the driver-focused design, the way the center stack sort of angles toward the driver, a nod to the performance luxury positioning of this model, no doubt. There's a nice leather-wrapped steering wheel in the typical early 90s with airbag design, thick comfortable leather seats, nicely padded door panels, and a classy analog clock. There's a solid array of standard features like automatic climate control, heated mirrors, a tilt and telescoping steering wheel, and power seat adjustments with 2 memory positions. I will say the Q45 is definitely an interior that looks best in black. This brown color scheme though, not so much. This color scheme is the same interior color I had on my 93 Nissan Sentra, my first car back in the day. Of course, I didn't have leather nor nearly as many options, but I did have the same turn signal and wiper stalks. Noticeably absent on this interior, however, is any kind of wood grain trim, or really any kind of trim accents. It's just a basic 90s plastic dash, and most of it looks about the same as you would find in any Nissan. Same can be said about the gauges. Again, there's nothing wrong with it, but this is a vehicle that started at $38,000 in 1990, and that's equivalent to over $96,000 today. And for about 2/3 the average US house price in 1990, I expect more than an analog clock to differentiate itself from the Nissan product line. Now I have to point out that young drivers will probably prefer this interior without wood grain. Black on black, just like this, is the way I would have wanted it when I was younger, but 17-year-olds weren't the target market, and even if they had a trust fund, they're gonna buy a 300ZX, not this. In 1991, the typical Q45 buyer was a male over the age of 50, and I can guarantee you that most of that demographic wants wood grain. As a matter of fact, some of them wanted wood grain so much that they added it after the fact. It's not uncommon to find used Q45s with aftermarket wood grain installed. Oh dear. I haven't seen wood grain that looks this bad since Rover installed wood grain on their rebadge of the first-gen Integra. Hello friends, what do you think of my new Q45?
I think you're at the wrong address. The Datsun meet is in that field 2 blocks over.
Isn't that a scrapyard?
Exactly.
So, what is under the hood of the Q45? Well, a dual overhead cam 32-valve 4.5-liter V8. That's what. It puts out 278 horsepower and 292 pound-feet of torque. Those are some pretty legitimate numbers for 1990. And though the Q45 is a heavy car, MotorWeek recorded its 0 to 60 time at 7.2 seconds, quite a bit faster than their best run in an LS. Well, if you guys want to trash talk, how about we pop hoods? How about you, Shannon? Want a race? The transmission is exclusively auto, which I have learned to expect in this segment, although I can't help but think that if Nissan really was trying to position this vehicle as a performance luxury car, maybe a limited run manual transmission option package might have been a good idea? I don't know, maybe just my own wishful thinking. Initially, the Q45 had one major option package, the Touring trim, which is designated by a lowercase t added to the Q45 badge on the trunk lid, though this package can also be recognized by the addition of the aforementioned spoiler and upgraded wheels. This package also came with the latest iteration of Nissan's 4-wheel steering system, also seen in the 240SX, 300ZX, and Skyline GTR, a further nod towards Infiniti's performance luxury positioning of the Q45. Other options were traction control and a cellular telephone. In 1991, a Q45A trim was added, which would give you an active suspension system, a larger rear sway bar, a CD player, and heated front seats. The Q45A's active suspension was the first of its kind in America. It had accelerometers at each of the 4 corners of the vehicle, which would detect things like bumps in the road, body roll, yaw and pitch during spirited driving, and then use hydraulic suspension actuators in each corner to counteract these forces. This was a $6,600 trim package in 1991.
Could I speak to the drug dealer of the house, please?
The mid-model run update was for the 94 model year, and let's start with the obvious. It seems Infiniti realized they were going to have to be a little more traditional in their styling, so the belt buckle was gone and in its place was a new chrome grille, with vertical grille lines of course, and slightly taller front headlights. It looks fine, but I really think they just needed to give us the President front end. Now that's a luxury grille. It's a little bit taller, and with taller headlights as well, it helps to give it a more higher end look, I think, that would have fit right in with American luxury buyers' tastes. As far as their European competition goes, this front end looks just like a 90s Rolls Royce, does it not? On the rear there's a new bumper and slightly revised taillights that are now trimmed out in chrome. Infiniti also heard the cries for wood grain loud and clear, and the updated interior now features subtle wood grain trim around the shifter and now chromed colored interior door handles. Other interior updates included a slightly revised gauge cluster, the addition of a standard passenger side airbag, standard heated front seats, revised radio and climate controls, and perhaps most importantly, there was now a cup holder. You do have to give Infiniti some credit for listening to the wants of their target market and updating the Q45 accordingly. The engine remained at the same output for 94, but there were some mechanical improvements. Mainly the plastic timing chain guides were changed to metal. The plastic guides were notorious for breaking. They do make kits to upgrade the pre-refresh Q45s to metal guides, and from what I've read online from people who own or work on these cars, doing so is pretty much necessary preventative maintenance at this point. For the transmission, there was a new cooler and an external filter added, and the first 2 gears got lower gear ratios. A side effect of this change, however, was nearly a second added to its 0 to 60 time when tested by MotorWeek, and to me, that's not exactly what you want when marketing your vehicle as a performance luxury sedan. It's gonna have a much harder time beating an LS to the golf course now. Oh man, if only I'd been here 1 second sooner. I still wouldn't have gotten a spot, but at least I'd have been here sooner. In 1995, the 4-wheel steering was removed from the Q45T, and it seemed Infiniti was perhaps trying to distance itself from its originally intended sportier luxury image. Problem is, now you've got a vehicle that was originally designed to be more on the sportier side, but reactions to the market has caused Infiniti to try and make the car less sporty. It's almost like it doesn't know who it is. This indecisiveness contributed to the Q45 coming up last place in Car and Driver's 1995 luxury car comparison test. Which car came first? The Lexus, of course. I think the first-gen Q45 did suffer a little bit from this indecisiveness, and that initial marketing campaign definitely didn't help. Alright, so here's my pitch for the ad. We'll show a beach with some waves crashing over it. Okay. We'll have a softly spoken voiceover of some guy saying touchy-feely, mumbo-jumbo crap that means nothing. Okay.
Wheel and accelerate to cruising speed.
And then we'll just cut to the brand name. We won't even show the car.
Hire this man!
I don't know, sir. Shouldn't we show the car so people can... That said though, owners who looked past the unconventional aspects of the Q45 and actually bought one were generally pretty satisfied with their vehicles, at least according to an owner's survey done by Popular Mechanics magazine for their June 1995 issue. Owners gave their Infinitis pretty high ratings across the board, especially when it came to the engine's power. Their main complaints were poor handling in snow or wet weather, which is kinda to be expected, and dim instrument cluster lighting. The main mechanical issues owners faced were trouble with their power windows, which gave me a chuckle, remembering the window issues I used to have with my G35. But honestly, if that's the main build quality issue, you aren't doing too bad. 64.8% of owners who responded to this survey said they would purchase a Q45 again. So was this first gen an underrated gem or a mismarketed mistake? Let me know your thoughts and what you think Infiniti could have done to maybe sell a few more of these.
What if you could take on a whole new image? Would you be more elegant? More dynamic? More comfortable? One of the world's best performing luxury cars has an almost entirely new identity.
For the second generation of the Q45, Infiniti kinda went back to the drawing board. They decided that if America wants comfort and luxury over performance, then that's what they'll get. The new for 97 Q45 is now based off the Nissan Sima rather than the President. The new design, especially the rear roofline, gives off Bentley vibes to me, and the front end now has much more grille. On the inside, there's a much more generous amount of wood grain, but there's no analog clock. I guess that wasn't really established as an Infiniti staple yet. Of course, it's loaded with pretty much all the same standard features as last year, plus a few more, but some journalists complained that a car at this price point really should have dual zone climate control by 97. The Lexus had it. On the flip side though, the rear seat legroom was much improved and there were now rear seat climate vents. The gauges remain pretty much standard 90s Nissan gauges, but there are trim rings around the tack and speedo now to try and upscale them a little. I guess it was out of budget to also outline the other two gauges. Alright team, here's what we do. We're gonna position the new Q45 as more of a luxury car, but I don't want to go too crazy. No one needs 2 climate control zones. Everyone needs a cal zone though. Pass that over here. And what's with this clock? This is a Nissan, not a jewelry store. Get it out of here. With all due respect, sir, the Lexus offers dual zone climate control. Don't you think the Lexus isn't gonna get the best of us this time?
You have struck Hercules.
A touring trim package added blacked out headlight housings, a black grille, different 5-spoke alloy wheels, a trunk-mounted CD changer, and heated seats. Oh, and a perforated leather-wrapped steering wheel. The only options you could add to the base model separately from the touring package was the CD changer and heated seats. The new engine was actually slightly smaller, now a 4.1-liter V8, and horsepower drops by 12 and torque by 14. It is a relatively small drop, and acceleration was still slightly better than last year due to the car being lighter. Maybe it's just me, but I think some owners of first-gen Q45s would be a little put off from buying a second-gen, if nothing else but because of the placebo effect now knowing the engine is smaller. But then again, I'm not quite 60 yet, the new median age for 97 Q45 buyers, so what do I know? The handling is as expected, a little more boat-like now, but the ride is smooth and the average Q45 owner just wants to float down the road anyway. A prompt update came for the 99 model year. The front end was modestly revised and now features HID xenon headlight bulbs. The rear was more significantly changed, with the red lenses removed from a revised trunk lid, and the sunroof was now a moonroof, meaning it's glass, the way it should have been from the get-go. An electronically adjustable suspension system was now standard. On the inside, that dearly missed analog clock has been added back to a revised center stack, and there are now audio controls mounted on the steering wheel. For 2000, there was an optional touchscreen navigation system, but this system has the side effect of the climate controls now being annoyingly small and kind of in a weird place. This option also deletes the clock. Oh come on, we just got that thing back! But sir, for the price of a house down payment, can we not give them a clock and navigation? A limited run anniversary edition was available for 2000, which added all of the touring package options plus anniversary badging, special wheels, and genuine wood grain trim, not from the plastic tree. Wood grain touches were added to the steering wheel and door handles became body colored rather than chrome. I'm not sure how much this package was, but those who waited a year got a much better deal as most of these things became standard in 2001. Although Infiniti seemed to now have a clearer direction in mind for the new Q45, and were doing their best to pivot based on market feedback, it didn't really help. Sales numbers remained low and only got worse as the years went by. I guess there's a pretty big advantage when you get it right the first time. These videos usually find their way to people who have owned these models, so I'd be curious to read your thoughts about them in the comments. Are these super underrated, or did Lexus sell nearly double the amount of second-gen LSs for a reason?
How you done, you touch me? How dare you touch me?
Alright, Infiniti. Third time's the charm. This Q45 is gonna be the best one. I can feel it! Oh. Okay, never mind. Admittedly, I'm not really a fan of 2000s era vehicle styling in general, with a few exceptions, so this is definitely not my taste. The rear has taillights that remind me of an Audi A4, and the front end has lights that look like they belong on an alien spaceship. Infiniti was actually quite proud of these lights, boasting in their press release that these HID projector lights feature 7 different lenses, creating the most powerful headlight system in the world, and the extra wide beam eliminates the need for fog lights. The interior is very luxurious and features just the right amount of genuine wood grain, available in willow, latte, or graphite colors. The gauges are more crisp and brightly lit now. They're electroluminescent, yet they're simple, and that's a good thing in a car like this. And yes, there's a clock. There's also an LCD screen. It's not a touchscreen though, thankfully, so controls are still tactile. This Infiniti does have a couple of firsts up its sleeve, as it was the first vehicle in North America to feature a reverse camera and a voice-controlled navigation system. So while there was not a touchscreen, if you couldn't figure out how to work these buttons, you could just talk to it. Infiniti, take me to Del Boca Vista.
We're moving in lock, stock, and barrel. We're gonna be in a pool. We're gonna be in a clubhouse. We're gonna be all over that shuffleboard court. And I dare you to keep me out!
Some of the standard feature highlights were dual-zone automatic climate control, an 8-speaker Bose premium sound system with a glove box mounted 6 CD changer, a cassette in case you haven't switched over to that new age digital media yet, heated front seats with 10-way adjustments for the driver, and memory positions not only for the seats, but for the side view mirrors and steering column position as well. A premium package adds an electronically controlled suspension damping system, upgraded wheels, the navigation system, as well as ventilated front seats, heated and power reclining rear seats, and rear seat controls for the audio and climate systems. It also added manual window shades and additional rear climate vents on the B-pillars. This premium package would add $8,000 to your Q45 purchase price.
Could I speak to the drug dealer of the house, please?
Safe to say, if you have a Q45 parked in your gated retirement community, your neighbors are going to know that you've got some money, and you don't know what to do with it.
How does 12.4% sound?
Well, your tip is $4.36.6666.
We'll round down.
What's under the hood of the new Q45? A bunch of plastic, but under all that is a new V8. It's back up to a 4.5 liter, and this one makes 340 horsepower and 333 pound-feet of torque, so it should be able to get you home in time for dinner at 4:30. The transmission is a new 5-speed automatic. It has a manual mode, but even when in said mode, it usually will auto-shift you well before the red line. But I don't think anyone is going to look at this car and mistake it for a sports car, so I don't even really know why they gave it manual mode. I'm sure it was nearly never used by the original owners of these cars. In 2003, an optional laser-guided adaptive cruise control system was made available, and a final— wait, what? For the adaptive cruise control display, they just stuck it in front of the existing gauges? Like, I know it's not technically obstructing anything you need to see, but that looks so bad. Alright, so for that laser, I'm too lazy to drive cruise control, you can just put the display screen for it right in front of the Speedo. I don't want to be designing a whole new gauge cluster, we ain't got the budget for that. But sir, a higher final drive ratio gave for a little bit better acceleration. It was at the cost of some highway fuel economy, but there are no highways in between Del Boca Vista, the nearest grocery store, and the bingo hall, so that's just fine. Your favorite 6 CDs can now be loaded directly into the dash, where they will likely be forgotten about and never seen again. There's now a Journey package available, which adds the laser adaptive cruise control, navigation system, the rear sunshade, and 17-inch run flat tires for buyers that didn't want to shell out for the full premium package. This package was only a mere $4,000. The mid-model run update comes for the 2005 model year. The front fascia has been slightly revised, and I can't help but notice there are now fog lights. A more major restyling was done on the rear, featuring new LED taillights that have a much more mid-2000s Infiniti look to them. There's not too much different about the interior. There are new colors, new seats, and what Infiniti calls a redesigned all-white gauge cluster. Redesigned? I can't even spot a difference. And weren't they white before? There could be some lighting or color change that doesn't really translate over pictures, I guess, but still, calling this redesigned is a bit of a stretch. Automatic windshield wipers can now be driver selected to vary speed based on rain density or vehicle speed, and the navigation system is now standard. The Q45 now has Infiniti's patented pre-crash front seatbelts, which would tighten during emergency braking. In 2005, Infiniti only managed to sell just over 1,100 units in the US, and not surprisingly, Infiniti discontinued the Q45 shortly thereafter, with 06 being the final model year, selling a total of only 415 vehicles, and it took them well into 2007 to unload them all. The M-Series replaced the Q as Infiniti's new flagship on paper, but we all know the only Infiniti model anyone cared about in the mid-2000s was the G35. As always, let me know what your favorite generation is in the comments, and give Nissan a few tips on how they could have sold a few more of these, or how to just sell more cars in general. Lord knows they still need your advice.